Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Renaissance Room podcast. And in today's episode, I wanted to come on a bit and I wanted to talk to you guys about some comments that I had on a YouTube short. And these are very general things. When I say general things, they're not general things, but I don't want to spend too much time on today's podcast. So it's actually not going to be a very long podcast. I just kind of wanted to expound upon some of my thoughts about a comment that I had about a video that I made. And just kind of wanted to come and, like I said, expound upon that. I was going to do it in a YouTube short, but I didn't really feel like setting up the camera, fixing my hair, and at least looking somewhat presentable since my hair has been impacted by the humidity. So I made a video just talking about what was it, and I was really not talking about it. I was mostly questioning what the obsession was with individuals who have chosen to be child-free, right? Be child-free by choice or whatever the case may be, right? They don't want children. I said, I've noticed that there's this uptick in this level of I'm throwing in a word salad. Let me slow down. I've noticed this increase in division, and I noticed that not all, because there are content creators who are child-free, childless. Girl, I don't know how we're using these words interchangeably. Honey, girl, you don't have kids and it is what it is, right? But I noticed how so many people, I'm seeing this more and more, are really coming down on parents. And it's this thing of like us versus them. The kids are misbehaved. The kids are making noise at dinner. The kids are too loud outside in the common area, in the park. And you really kind of have this normalization of hatred of children, which is interesting because a lot of the content creators who do center their work around speculating about parents and the lives of those who have children, they center it around the argument that they couldn't be able to provide for children and most people can't provide for children. And, it's really kind of like this anti-neglect rhetoric, right? This anti-child abuse rhetoric. But simultaneously, these are individuals who show great disdain, quite literally, for children, in the presence of children in day-to-day life. And so I think something that I just was wondering was, what was the obsession with people who don't have kids being so heavily involved in the lives of people who do have children, right? Like, I'm always seeing someone making a think piece, defending their choice. And it's like, who are you defending this choice from? Because let's just think about it realistically, right? You're saying that your friends are encouraging you to have children. Let's be realistic. Like, what person is encouraging you to do that, right? Like, I, as a parent, I've never encouraged anybody to have children. My friends, when they were parents, right? My relative, my cousin, when they had kids, nobody forced me to become a parent. It was a choice that I deliberately made. So it's like, for a lot of parents that I know whose pregnancies are not unplanned, who don't get married, and a lot of times you see this kind of like trajectory. It's not common. I'm not going to say it's not probable, but I would like to think that a lot of this rhetoric comes from white feminists. And I think it comes from white Americans, and white Americans having the income and also having the community, right? And so the expectation is that you marry, you breed children, even if you don't want children, right? And it's a part of white culture. It is something that looks like nuclear family. It is the thing that you do, right? And so I think that so much of this like anti-kid, child-free life, this is white women's business. Can I just be honest and just say that? Like, I think that this is white people's problems. This is not black people's problems, right? Our thing was, hey, you guys are getting pregnant in teen pregnancy, right? Hispanics, it's teen pregnancy, right? It's getting equal access to contraceptives. It's getting health education. It's getting reproductive education. Like, we didn't have that. We didn't have that. White women were getting pregnant and their contraceptive methods were getting abortion. So then you have the normalization of abortion. But black women were keeping their babies. You know why black women were keeping their babies? Because you look up and look, previous generations to my previous generation, right? Like, I'm Gen Z millennial, so Gen X, right? They've got like 4 or 5 kids. So it's like so much of the conversations, I think, for me, and I know on YouTube Short, the reach is just different, but I just feel like this is white women's problems. Like, this is not black people's problems. For a lot of black people today, and I was listening to FD Signifier, and he was just basically talking about how we have a black capitalism on the rise. For a lot of black people who are aspiring to be in affluent spaces, I'll say that, okay? I won't say too much, but I'll say affluent spaces, and are desiring capital and wealth and all the different things, they are taking on white women's feminism and they are taking on this anti-child rhetoric, right? But as I was reading in the lives of Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen, okay, this is the emotional lives of Black women, right? This is a book that I read. It's Inger Burnett Ziegler, PhD. Okay. She spoke about how motherhood for Black women was a rite of passage. Now, do I think that that has changed? I do. I think that it has changed with the decrease in community. I think that's changed because Black people are getting poorer. Our economic inequality has been pretty consistent, right? Our unemployment rates have been pretty consistent. Whereas white women and white people and white Americans, white men, right, have been consistently employed, right? However, Black people have been consistently unemployed, right? And so when we keep talking about freedoms and choice and things like that, it's always been inequality, right? African American people have always had to take their inequalities and still make something beautiful of it, right? That's why when a lot of people like to tell the story of poverty, and you always hear it from people who've never experienced poverty. You've always hear it from people who've never actually been in urban communities, right? It's always told from the white kid who comes in, who's an intern, right, at the university, you know what I mean? And they're from Idaho or California somewhere, right? This white saviorism, they're always the ones who are telling the stories. You see what I'm saying? So that typically is the thing that is on the forefront in regards to the dominant narrative. But little did you know, we were actually okay. Nobody was looking around like, oh my God, we're poor, right? We were outside. We were having fun. It was a completely different culture you weren't aware of. You weren't privy to. You didn't understand. That fun that you guys have when you're on TikToks and you're engaging in Black culture and you're engaging in our African-American vernacular and you're engaging in the games and the music and the dances. Yeah, that what was going on in the ghettos that you guys created, that you quite literally relegated, right, and segregated and made us stay there, right, while you all built the things that you wanted to build, right? Now you have white flight, now you have gentrification, but like that was culture. That's what you guys are understanding. That was culture. Now, today, you have this glamorization, right? Was there poverty? Was there things going on? Absolutely. But there were also things going on in white neighborhoods as well. I just told you about Ruby Frankie, Lindsay Clancy. Going crazy, white woman going crazy. And you guys are calling this postpartum. You know what's postpartum? Is being from a lower socioeconomic background, being relegated, being having to stay in certain communities because quite literally there is inequality and there is a system in place that makes it so incredibly difficult for you to get out of a lower economic environment, okay, lower socioeconomic environment, and being a woman and being vulnerable and not having equal access to education and opportunities, right? And finding yourself having hormones and wanting to date and meet a decent guy, right? Basically what I'm saying is, it's difficult. It's being poor and trying to date and trying to meet people who have morals and all this. Like, so it's like, I just think too often, y'all, I'm gonna be real with you. I don't think that, and let me say this how I want to say this, because I'm not saying we're not reading enough. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is I just think that dominant narratives in society tend to whitewash our realities, right? They tend to blend cultures in a way that flattens everything and it just completely obliterates any nuance and the realities of complexities and the realities of America's segregation, right? And I don't like it, right? So much of this whole anti-child rhetoric is white women's business. Has there been scholars? Right. There's always been African-American scholars who've also gone off and had these same rhetorics. But guess what? They were too integrated into white institutions. And guess what? If they weren't in those institutions and they didn't necessarily take on this type of white feminism, they were homosexual. Baldwin was gay. So he's probably not going to advocate for family, right? Roxanne, gay. Bell Hooks, gay, right? So it's like, where are we getting all of this anti-child rhetoric from? Especially as African-American people, that's never been a thing. What we did have, and I like to throw this in here because I'm learning more about it, their policies, we had the Black Panther Party, which had programs created specifically for Black youth. Right? We've always had community around children. We've always included children in our families, right? We've always included children in our communities. We've always regarded children as Black people. right? That's why we were domestics. We took care of the white babies. Okay. We were the nannies. Okay. White women never have, they don't have that history. So it's like, I think for me, these conversations sort of fall flat because it's like y'all intellectualize a thing, right? And we'll sit here and we'll have all these concepts and we'll have all this drama under, the belief of unison when it's like, what exactly are we protecting? What exactly are we defending? Live your life. Like I said, when I was a single woman, okay, I wasn't a teen mom. Okay. I didn't have children incredibly young. I was young, healthy, fertile, right? Thank God. Pregnancy was viable. Okay. But I was not so out of it in the sense that I was just so incredibly young. I had no concept of self. No, my choice to be a parent was very deliberate. Nobody forced that on me. I did not feel like somebody was making me have a baby. Nobody was making me have a baby. I wanted to have a children. I wanted to be a mother. And I was encouraged to do that by my family and my friends, right? But nobody was like, oh my God, when are you going to have kids? So I'm not saying that people are crashing out, but I'm also saying, and I'm referring to Ingrid Burnett's Ziegler PhD, okay? I'm saying that there are a lot of people, especially those African-American people specifically, who are taking on white feminism, okay? And I'm not just coming down on women. I'm just talking generally here, right? I'm not attacking anybody. I'm saying that for Black academics and for Black people who find themselves up on the ladder of social mobility, they will reach a point where they realize they're not really clicking with any or either side of the mountain. Do you hear what I'm saying? Right? Like there is no place to go. And so on some level, I've questioned the science behind it, right? I said that Homo sapiens are the only ones who will obliterate their entire environment, right? And I'm saying maybe we're doing this because the environment is no longer habitable, right? We've got technology. We can't keep up with it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of different adaptations happening. I don't know, honey. We've got the obliteration of gender. Like there's a lot of things that are taking place during this time, and it's very historic, and we don't know how that's going to impact the future. But what I am here to say is, hey, we've got to start, differentiating and sort of deciphering, to be honest, discerning between some of these ideologies that we're taking on, because a lot of this don't have nothing to do with us. It's not anything that we can really cross-reference, right? This is all relatively new. You know what I mean? But when you start talking about more and more people having less access to partners who would be considered X, Y, and Z, right? I don't know what white women's problems are. I'm not white, but I do see on average, you know what I mean? White Americans on average, even the poor ones, they still regard African-American people as less than, right? I can share two experiences recently. I was, talking to an entrepreneur of mine that I knew, and they shared how they were doing a business and things were working out. And, people were essentially making very, racist and microaggression comments about their products and the things that they were selling, essentially saying, hey, you don't deserve to be here. Let me see how I can knock you down a peg, right? Because that is how white people go about inserting their superiority. They will start to find ways to kind of play on the stereotypes regarding you. My personal experience, and I hate explaining these because I don't feel like it typically comes across that way. I think a lot of people will find a way to try to say that's not what a person meant when I know that's what they meant, right? So I typically have been silent about my own personal experiences with racism, but it's exhausting. I was in a store and there was a white mother who had her little baby. Mind you, I'm at a cheap store, girl. I'm at the Dollar Tree. And I said, I should have got a cart for my baby because, once kids just start running around, they just, it's so hard to get them to sit down. And she says, yeah, they just have such affordable prices in here. And I'm thinking to myself, like, wait, did you hear what I said? You know what I mean? I'm thinking like, why did she feel the need to relate in that way when here I am trying to relate to her as a mother? And this isn't the first time this has happened to me as a mom. I typically, when I meet white mothers, it's like white women will be online, like this example with Lindsay Clacy. This is why I hope this woman gets convicted because she's evil. They'll be online crying postpartum. But meanwhile, you have an African-American woman who relationship didn't work, attempts at marriage failed, right? Really just due to the stress, due to racism, due to the economic inequality that persists within our communities, that doesn't make marriage in a nuclear family attainable, right? That doesn't make traditionalism attainable, right? And they can't relate to that, right? When I see a white mother and I'm sharing my experience with, oh, this is what worked for me, this is what you can do. It's like, white women will be sitting online crying. But the moment that you go to console them and relate to them as a person, it's like, I can't relate to you. Like, ew, no. You know what I mean? It's like, oh no, like you know what I mean? So there's always this assertion of dominance. There's always this assertion of superiority. And I just, it's something that persists. And so I think so much of the conversation about poverty, I'm not going to lie, I think in terms of motherhood, and this might be a bit of a reach. I don't have any research to back this, but I would say that I think it could be anti-Black. Because I think really what you're saying is like, who gets to have access to reproductivity now? You guys have taken everything. You've taken education. You've taken the most, high paying jobs, you know what I mean? Businesses, right? Content creation, even in terms of that, right? It's like, it's about appearing perfect and having things and, cosplaying some ideal version of like whiteness, in terms of desirability. So it's just like, I don't know. And then you start talking about children. Right. And Black kids have always grown up poor. Enslaved persons have always grown. So it's like to me, it sounds like you're denying people the right to exist. You're denying people the right to have joy. You know what I mean? And I just find that to be incredibly interesting. Lindsay Clacy was not a white woman. She was not a woman struggling in regards to economic security. She had a husband. She had a house. And her house, even though it looks like crap to me from what I've seen, that was in a pretty white, affluent neighborhood. Right? Same thing. Ruby Frankie had a husband, had a beautiful home, had friends, family, networks, opportunities for entrepreneurial endeavors. Lindsay Clacy was looking into some type of marketing thing, right? And these women go on and commit heinous acts. And when you guys see a lot of individuals who possess this type of ideology, which is very sinister, it's very insidious, it's very under the rug, right? And it's really a hatred for children. It is a desire for some, I think, towards, killing and murder and assassination. And whether or not you want to look at historical context and see whose history particularly dominates that, be my guess, right? But what I am going to say is that I think that's really what's under the guise of all of this, right? To have no regard for children is to have no regard for life, period. No regard for life, period. So I'm not telling you that having a child is purposeful. I don't care what you do with your life. I don't know you. I don't know why people get so up in an uproar about this. I don't care what you do with your life. I don't know you. Do you think I care? I don't care. That's your life. But what I am saying is, hey, I'm starting to question, why is everybody online crashing out about choices that do not impact them, about lives that do not impact them? Poor children, child abuse, child neglect has been around for years. It's been around for years. White children, Hispanic children, Black children. We got ICE detention centers in 2026. Y'all don't care that much, because if you cared, you would get out and do something. If you cared, you'd probably be a little bit more like Miss Rachel and saying children's lives matter. But instead, you're sucking your teeth when the kid is in the elevator with you in your raggedy apartment, you know what I mean, on the way down to the common area with their parent, right? Instead, you're sucking your teeth because children are walking down the street and they're making noise and they're asking questions and they're existing. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, to me, this hatred of children, it's nothing more than policing reproductivity, and not, from a white woman's feminist perspective about Roe v. Wade, but from an anti-Black perspective to say, hey, and this could be a reach, humbly, right? But it's like, I feel like to me, it's more so saying who has a right to reproduce and who doesn't. And I think we've seen that with Margaret Sanger, period. So this may not have been the best way to kind of construct this argument and this opinion. And I've done my best, you know what I mean? I'm very passionate about this, but overall, I think I'm trying to speak in a way that, is just a little bit more less direct, and more just in a way that gives people some time to think about what I said. You know what I mean? Because I'm not attacking any one person, but what I am saying, is that ideas and beliefs shape things. And I think that there are too many people making decisions based on the internet. Too many people, Black people specifically, making decisions based on the economic freedom and the white privilege of white Americans, right? The economic freedom, the reproductive freedom, right, of white Americans, right? And I think that there just gets to a point where it's like we have to kind of reel back in some of this, or at least at the very least start to dissect it. You know what I mean? I think whenever something becomes, popular or normalized or whatever, we seek to protect it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, it's your life. You listen, you do you, right? But I just think I can't seem to, again, like I said, wrap my head around people who spend so much time speculating about the lives of people speculating about lives that they don't live. When I did not have children, I did not think about children. I had nieces and nephews. I wasn't, you know what I mean? I also wasn't really involved in terms of like wanting to just show them off as like my children. And I didn't brand myself as rich auntie. I was an aunt, you know what I mean? But there was no branding of this. There was no remake. There was no need to prove or defend my choice. These were my nieces and nephews, and it was just that simple. So my only curiosity in saying everything that I'm saying is, what is with the obsession of defending your choice? Who is forcing you to do these things? I don't think that anybody is forcing you to do these things. And to me, I think we start getting down to the root and the crux of a thing. I'm hearing white women say, I want to take part in patriarchy. I want to be protected by white men. I want to have the power and the privilege, and I want traditionalism, and I want to be socially esteemed from having a marriage, but I don't want to have children. And that sounds like a very different problem than Black maternal health care. That sounds like a very different problem than Black women and their socioeconomic environments and the lack of relational and reproductive opportunity. That sounds like a totally different problem than economic inequalities between Black and white communities, between Black motherhood and white motherhood. Okay, that sounds like a totally different problem than Black boys can't read, than these educational systems have failed African American children, post-integration. Like, I don't know, girl. What angle we coming from with this? And here, all I'm trying to do is get to the root, trying to get to the motive, because I just don't understand the overinvestment with explaining yourself and convincing everybody that your life is so free. If your life is just so free, be free. I never understood it. And I'm not attacking anybody. Every life comes with its trade-offs. Like I said, I'm not going to sit here and go on and on because I sound like I'm defending myself. I'm just mostly curious as to what is the obsession. That's all. I just don't think, like, even for example, let me try to think about somebody who, like, people who are living certain lives right now that don't impact me, that don't impact my day-to-day life. Like, and I say certain lives, I mean, people who's made their life choices, right? Like, I'm not sitting around thinking about them all day. I'm not sitting around defending why their choice was wrong or came with X risk or was a disadvantage and why my choice was the better choice. Like, I'm just not sitting around doing that all day. I don't care. So that's my question. Why do you care? And who exactly is forcing you to have children? I really want to know. My family did not force me to have children. I'm a Black woman. I was not forced to have children. I was not coerced to have children. I was not given a perfect blueprint of a picket white fence, right, that sparked my desire to have children. Right. It was a choice, and it was my choice. And so that is my question to you all. That is all I was saying. And so when, we're saying things like, well, parents are raising their children horribly, where humans are behaving horribly, right? It's the culture that we have today. Have you not seen how overt the racism has become under this current administration? Have you not seen the bad behavior demonstrated time and time again from your U.S. president? But you're worried about the children with the iPads who, because of Meta, because of these white men in positions of power who are quite literally planning to take over the world with technology, have integrated in such a way that we can't get rid of it even if we tried, right? You're going to blame the children, the helpless children. I don't understand that. You can't go with 30 seconds without being on your phone. Why is it? It's noon. It's 2 p.m. 2 p.m. and you're on my YouTube. So, I mean, come on. I don't understand. We've all got like however many hours, right, in screen time each day. So why are we saying, children? Do you guys not understand that the world has changed? Social media, technology has single-handedly revolutionized the way that we will communicate today and forevermore. It has single-handedly revolutionized and revolutionize our social engineering. You don't go out and meet people anymore. You get online, right? That is not that's not a problem for the children. Do you understand that? Like, that's not a problem of children. The fact that these schools have decided to have so many budget cuts, right? To the point where we've got substitute teachers being students' teachers from the first day on throughout the semester because of budget cuts, right? If schools decide we're going to implement and integrate AI, just like your little raggedy job, they're doing the same thing, okay? And children are getting iPads sooner and sooner and sooner, and they're incorporating technology in the classroom sooner and sooner. How is that the children's fault? Because last I checked, it was your president that you voted for, a lot of y'all, who decided to gut the education, our educational system. Okay. So I just like, I don't know. The stuff that we say, it just doesn't really hold up. It doesn't really make any sense. Their iPad is a problem, but your phone is not. Half of y'all can't even go out to eat without taking a picture, showing something, coming online very quickly to talk about your day, talk about your friend, talk about whatever impulse you may be having. You're quick to record a video, even if nobody watches. So I just don't think that that really holds up. And you're talking about bad behavior. Well, that is going on time and time again. You got Nolan Wells' friend, 30 white boys. I don't even know how many. More than enough, right? Young black man, Nolan Wells, completely outnumbered. Take this boy out on Horn Island. Only can get there by private boat. Federal land, by the way. Federal. Right. Pretty significant. Okay. And nobody knows where he went. And you got these white boys on podcasts defending themselves. What are they defending? Your friend comes up dead. Nobody knows what happened. And we just got to defend ourselves. That's bad behavior. That's poor character. That's bad behavior. Yeah, you're worried about a child who can't even logically reason, who doesn't even have emotional intelligence, who's still learning language. You're worried about them having a tantrum because all they want is the Skittles. And their mother said no, because they want Skittles all day. Like, I don't understand that. So you guys are doing what America always does, and it is beating up on the victim. It is punching down on the victim. It is always about controlling the victim, blaming the victim, and making the victim responsible, right, for fixing whatever it is that's currently wrong. It's a very easy ploy. It's a very easy shortcut to circuit doing all the, what you guys love to say, critical thinking, to think about what is really going on. What is really going on? Is there a reason why we're getting rid of child places? Is there a reason why you can't take your kids to McDonald's anymore and have them play for free, right? Maybe they wouldn't have to go to this expensive restaurant. They can go to McDonald's. Is there a reason why there's so many pedophiles out in the world? People are so sick and twisted. How many CEOs last year got arrested? Not even last year. Let's talk about this year. Actually, let's talk about we can talk about American history. How many pedophiles, starting with Jefferson, how many pedophiles, okay, with Hemmings, how many pedophiles have been arrested for child pornography? Can't even leave your children anymore in the daycare centers. Can't leave them anywhere. Hardly can leave them anywhere because some people are so sick and twisted. And these are your leaders. These are your leaders. Your president was in the Epstein files. One of the biggest sex traffickers. That was your president. So it's just like, I don't know, y'all. I don't know. It's a problem. Let me tell you something. We got a problem, America, and it's not children. We got a problem, America, but it is not the children. It is not the children. And quite frankly, I'm not really sure if there is anything to protect children. I don't think that any resource. Nolan Wells' family was in an affluent place, as you can clearly see. He was friends with stepmother was a judge. You're talking money. You're talking education. You're talking prestige. And that didn't save him. So for everybody, money. Money's not going to save us, Black people. Money's not going to save us. Prestige, affluence, being in the rooms with these individuals, it is not going to save us. Nolan Wells is not the first. We keep fighting and hoping that Nolan Wells will be the last, right? But I just think it gets to a point where the conversations start to be very redundant, and we have to get back to the basis of like, what are we really here for? What are we using our time for? What exactly, have we been put on this earth to do? Because I can assure you, all this selfishness that you guys are doing, this individualism that you guys are doing, it is not going to help. And the reality is that some of y'all, I'm just going to be real with you because I think you need to hear this. Some of y'all are not calculated enough to really count the cost, okay? To really count the cost in your life to make life-altering decisions on a long-term basis, right? You've not considered the cost. That's all I'm saying. I'm not talking about children. I'm talking about just quite anything in life, right? A lot of y'all are making a lot of life-altering decisions based on social media, based on what sounds good, based on whatever the dominant majority is, whatever the thing that will get you into the social group. If you say the right thing and you talk popular and you like the same shows and you share the same opinions, right? That's that group think that we're talking about. And that right there is going to get you social currency. It's going to get you friendships. It's going to get you it's going to get you brand opportunities. But what it's not going to do is be with you when you're dealing with the consequences of whatever choices you make. I'm not talking about children. Okay. I'm talking about whatever choice y'all are making based on the internet, based on a trend, based on something that is hot and popular today. Honey, you're the only person who's going to be sitting with that consequence. And I can tell you right now, the only person who's going to be getting sympathy is white women. So you might as well just go hang it up. Okay. White women are the only women who are going to experience any level of remote empathy for the trends that they partake in and the choices that they make. Okay. So yeah, I think that's the end of my rant. Peace.